Welcome into college football smothered and covered day one of SEC Media Days here at the Omni in Dallas. Got a great show for you today. We'll talk to South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer. We'll also talk LSU with T-Bob Hebert, Ole Miss with Richard Cross, and we'll wrap things up with Peach Bowl president and CEO Gary Stokan. Of course, we are brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all things sports this summer, whether it be Major League Baseball, golf, you name it, NASCAR. They've got everything, live lines, odds, props, everything over there. And when you're done, you can go play some blackjack, maybe some poker, maybe one of the 150 slot options. Their online casino. Use promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V. That's B-L-E-A-V. And you'll get $50 matched to your first deposit of up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. We're here with South Carolina coach Shane Beamer. You are upset with me. Why are you upset with me?
I'm upset with your rankings of SEC head coaches that would win in a fight. Okay. And frankly, there's a lot of people that know me that felt that was an inaccurate ranking.
Okay. Tell me what kind of, like, are Anchorman? Are you coming out with weapons or what's happening?
Nah, I just think that I consider myself young, fairly athletic, work out every single day, exercise regularly, in the weight room every morning at 6 a.m. I'm hard-pressed to believe that everybody's doing that at 6 a.m. Some of the things that I do, pushing sleds and throwing med balls and whatnot, but it's all good. I'd rather be low in those rankings than high in another one.
I need to see some cardio. Cardio this on the sidelines.
Well, there's plenty of cardio. You come to Columbia one morning, meet me in the weight room at 6 a.m., and we'll see.
All right. Well, you're higher than Drinkwitz, so that's good. All right, so last time you were on the show, you hadn't named a starting quarterback, but we all sort of knew who was it going to be. So now, give us a scouting report. Lenore Sellers, what do you got?
Yeah, so we named Lenore as the starting quarterback coming out of spring practice. Told him he's got to continue to compete. Yeah. Robbie Ashford, who we brought in from Auburn, is going to continue to compete to try and be the quarterback. And we also have Luke Doty that's in that mix as well. So we've got a good group at that quarterback room, young, athletic. Both are bigger bodies, obviously different than Spencer Rattler. Both those, Robbie and Lenore, are both 240-pound guys that can run and throw both, so it brings a different element to our offense. Both of them are having awesome summers and kind of eager to see how it continues to develop.
So with Robbie Ashford, he obviously has SEC experience, probably the most experienced as a quarterback.
Yep.
What did you learn from him, watching him at Auburn? Where does he need to improve to be part of your scheme?
Yeah, I think, he's kind of had not the ideal
journey. I was going to say journey's probably the right word.
When you talk about Oregon to Auburn, multiple coaches,
sure,
as well. I think Robbie was just looking for some consistency.
Yeah.
Solidifying the coaching staff and the system that he's going to be in, where he can really just get in there, work with the coach, and develop as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And he's done that with Dal Loggins, our offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. I feel like Robbie's made a lot of progress since he got there in January, and eager to see him. I think he would tell you there's a lot of areas to improve. I think the biggest thing is just playing quarterback and being confident and being around a coaching staff that believe. I'm not saying anybody didn't, but a staff that believes in him and continues to help him get better.
The offensive line.
Yep.
It's been. The injuries have just decimated you guys over the last couple of seasons. Is it one of those things this year where you hope and you've been trying to teach them, hey, you learn your best lessons from the things that hurt most?
Yeah, I think you could look at a lot of positions and say that. We went through some uncomfortable moments last year because of injuries in youth. We grew from it. It wasn't always pretty, but we grew. We started 2 true freshmen on the offensive line last year. They'll be better for that this year. There's no question we're more talented on the offensive line than what we were last year at this time. We have more experience because those guys are a year older, and now I think the key is for them just to continue to grow and develop and get better. But we grew from last year, and those guys, that's a hungry group as well, because they've heard what's being said about them on the outside, and I know they're excited to put that to bed.
All right, I don't want any advertisers or partners to get mad at you. best restaurant in Columbia?
See, I can't name them all because somebody's going to get mad at me. We got a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good ones in Columbia. It's hard to name one. If I name one, I'll probably forget a sponsor, like you're saying. I'm going to make a friend mad that owns a restaurant that I don't name. So I'll just say that there's a lot of really good ones, and fortunate to live in the capital city of South Carolina.
It's a great place. Well, appreciate it, Shane.
You got it, buddy. Thank you.
Appreciate Coach Shane Beamer stopping by. He's a great guy, and I promise I will rank him higher in the SEC coaching fighting rankings next season. So let's go to this season. LSU, one of the teams that I think can really make a splash this year. Schedule's very easy. Plenty of talent returning. Best offensive line in the country. Speaking of offensive line for LSU, T-Bob Hebert stopped by the Smothered and Covered booth this afternoon to talk a little bit about the Tigers and also the SEC. One of the best people, not only in the media world,
but
but
it's very kind.
The whole world in general. T-Bob Hebert, 104.5, former LSU center, but I think most importantly, the best dressed man at SEC Media Days. And my pool partner yesterday. How awesome is the pool at this place?
The pool's great.
The pool was
great.
fantastic.
This is the ultimate example, guys, of why there is actual value to setting people's expectations very low because you can get a lot more credit for not actually doing anything that impressive. Like for instance, normally I wear like a bathing suit, some sort of like flowery kind of loud button down.
It was a flowery bathing suit last night.
I love a sexy flowery bathing suit that shows off a lot of thigh. But the point is, normally I dress like a slob, and so today I finally wore a suit for the first time, and the amount of compliments and credit that I've been given, you would think I actually accomplished something. They're like, "Wow, man, you really made it. You're an adult now. They're so proud of you." So
Are you an adult though?
It's been very fun. Shit, I got three kids. So yes, I feel very adult. Although I did in buzzer-beating fashion, I just took home LAB Young Broadcaster of the Year for Louisiana, and the age cutoff is 35, and I just turned 35
They
in February.
named you Broadcaster of the Year?
Young Broadcaster of the Year. Okay, I'm still young, dude. I mean, no,
I'm impressed.
My knees, God, my knees don't feel like it, but it's cool though, man. I love this suit though. This suit
looks
feels
good.
great.
It looks good. It looks good. Okay, let's. Do we have to talk about LSU?
We can talk about whatever you want, dude.
Let's talk about LSU. What is the ceiling for LSU this season?
Oh, I mean, I think they're kind of fascinating in that I think their ceiling is actually pretty damn high. They have a very friendly, or I guess in the SC, maybe you would say relatively friendly schedule.
Yeah, that's fair.
It feels weird to say that when you have 10 of 12 Power 5 games, which not a lot of teams have.
Yep.
Because they have both USC and UCLA on there. A couple of SEC Big Ten classic matchups. But you're catching USC at a crossroads that is narratively very satisfying because your crossroads are actually so similar. I just think that USC is a bit worse in a lot of spots than is LSU.
Of spots.
And
far worse tackling than LSU, which if you look at LSU last year, that seems almost impossible.
Well, and it's like they're both both those Heisman guys. Yep. Both are trying to replace their defensive staffs after god awful defenses.
Yeah.
It's year 3 for Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly, and it's crazy because those two have been linked since the search. They used each other as smoke screens, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Lincoln Riley used LSU as I am not going to be the head coach at LSU. But he didn't say anything about USC.
That is true.
And then
Vice versa.
LSU used Lincoln Riley so that nobody knew what was going on with Kelly. So in weird ways, these guys have been linked forever, and now it comes to a head here in year 3. But Brian Kelly's won 10 games 2 years in a row. Lincoln Riley's last year was an abject disaster.
Sure.
LSU was a defensive disaster, and LSU's recruited better. So, LSU should win that game. UCLA should win that game.
Sure.
And then when you look at their SEC slate, all the hard games are at home. At A&M is sketchy. At A&M may be the game that decides 9. I'm getting pretty bullish on A&M, though.
Are you?
Yeah. I'm a bit of an A&M truther where I feel like the Elko hire, Also, a lot of it's tinged with personal bias in that Tommy Moffitt, the strength coach, is my favorite coach I've ever played for. And if I know one thing, they ain't going to be soft. Not with Tommy Moffitt. And I think that's been a problem for A&M. A lot of flash, not a lot of substance. So between the Elko hiring, Moffitt hiring, Wigman being older, even after all the transfers, they still have the 8th best blue chip ratio in the country. I think there's actually a lot of reason to be bullish on A&M. Notre Dame better be ready week 1. But anyway.
I think with A&M, too, not to get sidetracked from LSU, I can't buy Elko yet.
It's fair.
I think that it's you're close. I certainly an upgrade from Jimbo. And AM fans hated me because I kept saying that Jimbo sucked since the moment he got hired. Turns out Jimbo, in fact, sucked.
You're right.
I don't know about Elko. I think it's wait and see for me.
Here's what I was saying. Wait and see. That's completely reasonable. But you have a cat who, when he was a DC at A&M, obviously those were their best years. Yep. They had a win percentage well over 70. When he left, they immediately dropped to sub 500. It's not a correlation causation. We all know it doesn't mean one equals the other, but it's a piece in it. And he won games at Duke, dude. And if you can, it's kind of how I feel about Kalen DeBoer, but just on a way lesser scale. DeBoer's obviously more proven, but what happens when you give Kalen DeBoer Alabama's roster? And then if you're telling me Elko could go 9-4 at Duke, what happens when you give him A&M's roster?
True, that's
which
fair.
is way better than anything he's ever had before. Well,
mostly
except when he was DC there. And so it's I feel pretty good about them, but they could be the difference, I think, with LSU between maybe 10-2 versus 9-3. But LSU's ceiling to me is pretty high because I think it's a playoff team. I think if they go 10-2, then I think if you go 10-2 in the SEC, you'll make the playoffs. No matter what, right?
Yes, no matter what.
Yeah. So you got LSU, Tennessee, Mizzou, and then maybe you throw you could
I think Ole Miss is in there. Yeah, I think there's four teams in the top tier, and then you move it down from there.
And then so which one of those teams will find their way to 10-2? And what fascinates me about that grouping is they all play Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's true.
So Oklahoma is actually the team that will decide who does or does not make the playoffs this year.
And kind of a passive aggressive slight at Oklahoma too, a little bit.
It's just so Oklahoma's in a weird spot where I just don't know, you don't know what to make of him. Speaking of not knowing what to make of a guy, I don't think anybody had a more confusing year last year than Brent Venables because he did the thing he beat Texas.
Yeah.
He beat Texas. The world was his oyster.
Yeah.
They were going to win the Big 12. They were going to go to the playoff. After the 6-7 disaster, everything was going to be good.
And then
you found a way to somehow make that season not successful.
And you lost to your rival in the last season.
You somehow lose Bedlam, a rivalry which you can't even call a rivalry because you've won 95% of them or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And not only do you lose Bedlam, but it keeps you out of the Big 12 and puts Texas in. To win, you could not have had a more anger-inducing 10-win season if you sat down and wrote the script.
Yeah.
With a screenwriter.
Yeah. No, it's 100% accurate. It's 100% accurate. Okay, so with LSU, you're obviously the greatest offensive lineman in LSU history.
Fun fact: I was the highest-rated player on NCAA 2012 for LSU.
Were you really?
Not to brag. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep. 92 overall. Again, guys. I don't want that information out there, so don't spread this anywhere. Don't tell all your friends about
92?
it. 92? Hey.
In 2012?
And not to brag, dude. What are you going to do?
Was that Jarrett Lee?
That was the year where we ended up going undefeated.
Oh, that's right.
So that was before that year.
Yeah. That's
but
right.
nobody knew that Tyrann Mathieu was going to go on to be a Heisman candidate.
It would have taken 1 week in this day and age when they readjust the rankings.
Yes.
1 week and you would be below 10.
Tyrann would have been 99 easily after that Oregon game.
After 1 week.
After that Oregon game.
Yeah. Okay, so with LSU, the defense was god-awful last year.
They're actually worse than USC, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, but USC can't tackle.
Yeah, true.
How good or less, how less bad does LSU have to be defensively?
I think if you are middle of the pack, 60s, stuff like that, I think you're probably 9-3. I think if you push into the top 30, maybe top 40. I think that's maybe where you could get into that 10-2 range. And it's weird.
See, I think that range, national championship, legit national championship contender.
Well, maybe so, right? Because if you make the playoff, I mean, I guess now by definition you're
dice.
at least in the dance, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a team that's like hot, like you've figured yourself out as the year goes on, like you could be a 2-loss team that's probably maybe that could be favored because like maybe you're just playing better, right?
Yeah.
So I think and my kind of favorite defensive stat is quickly becoming stop rate, where it's very simple. It is just every time an opponent gets the ball, what's the percentage of drives that end in points?
Yeah.
Versus ending in turnover, punting, whatever. LSU was allowing opponents to score at like a 60% clip last year. So if you got the ball, you had a better than coin flip chance of putting points on the board.
That seems impossible.
It was awful. They ranked at certain points of the season, they got slightly better at the end, but they were literally down in like the 120s, 130s in terms of stop rate. So if that number gets to 60, then that's when I think you're getting in that 9-3, maybe 10-2. And then like you said, if that number could get so high as 30, then you might be talking about like some actual championship noise, maybe a big upset here or there. Even though I guess the only real upsets on their schedule potentially would be like Ole Miss, which is in Death Valley, and that's going to be tough for
and
Ole
I think
Miss.
when you,
and then Alabama, obviously.
I don't know what but here's the thing. I don't know what the odds are, right? I don't even think there is one for LSU Ole Miss yet. Death Valley matters, and for Alabama, we have my thing with Alabama is if anybody here, and there will be takes, all over here, if anybody here has a definitive take on Alabama, they're a liar.
See, I think
because we just don't know. Like, there's no blueprint to replace the greatest of all time.
No, but I'm very bullish on Alabama because it kind of goes back to a bit of the Elko logic where Kalen DeBoer's resume speaks for itself. It's an incredibly proven resume. What he did with Washington the last 2 years, the teams that he beat consistently. I mean, we forget he 2-piece Sark. I think he 3-piece Lanning.
Yeah.
Like all these other coaches that we think are so great. Like he beat with lesser teams.
Sure.
Consistently. I think his record in ranked games against the top 10 is like something absurd. I can't remember off the top of my head. So whatever. DeBoer's super proven, win at every level. You now give him a spaceship of a roster.
Sure.
Something that he's never even had a modicum of what he now has. And it all goes down to Jalen Milroe for me. And I know the weapons are a huge Achilles heel. And that'll ultimately, I think, decide Alabama's season. How good can Jalen Milroe overcome what appears to be outside looking at a lack of weapons?
Lack of weapons. The receivers are a big problem.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And running back, you don't have anybody that's proven. Now, with Alabama under Saban, that didn't matter. It was just like rechurning over and over and over again the same running back. With Jam and with Justice, they're really talented. We just don't know.
But you know what DeBoer loves to do? He loves to run the ball. It was one of the more fascinating things.
And he loves to get players out in the backfield or out of the backfield in the flat too.
Well, and if you looked at every big game that they had last year, even though we all thought of Washington as this throw first, like deep ball, constant attacks, and there's a lot of that. But Dylan Johnson would get like 30 carries. Like they were in every big game, there would be like 30 to 33 carries given to the running backs. So what happens now when you give him that Alabama offensive line and the talent of that backfield? And I think out of all of your top 5 quarterbacks, nobody has more room to improve and take a massive leap than does Jalen Milroe.
I think that's fair.
Because he's only started for 1 year. Everybody acts like he's a known quantity.
Yeah.
Like, that was his first year last year.
He was thrown in for 1.5 games.
Yeah, like the Arkansas stretch from like the year before, I think.
And then was it Texas A&M?
Something like that.
Yeah. It was Texas A&M because Haynes King had a shot to win at the 5-yard line.
Yes. So, he's only started for 1 year. Look at the improvement he had from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And then understand that Tommy Rees, whatever Wunderkind kind of shine he had on him, it's kind of gone the opposite direction where we all think Tommy, like, does anybody talk about Tommy Rees anymore?
No.
Exactly.
No.
So now you're giving him Kalen DeBoer, who we believe to be one of the best offensive minds in the country, granted without Ryan Grubb, which bears mentioning, but it's like the writing is on the wall for Jalen Milroe to be awesome. Like, there's no bigger difference than from your first year starting to your second year starting. He has a much more confident and stable position entering the season.
Sure.
He has a much more confident and stable offensive coaching staff entering the season. And he has such a clear area in which to improve, which is the short to intermediate game and getting the ball out of his hand.
Yeah.
Craziest that I saw, according to PFF, he had an average time to throw of 3.44 seconds last year. Worst in the country. So he literally, and it's never.
And he never got a clean snap,
and
ever.
It's like, I don't want him to be like, I never want to force him to be something he's not. I don't want him to be like top of that list, but you can't be quite that long.
No.
And so increasing your short and intermediate range, that'll get that number down. So like, I look, am I allowed to curse here? I won't curse.
No,
it doesn't matter.
You can. It's cool.
Okay, well, I fucking hate Alabama, okay? To my core, down to my nuts, and my toenails, my RNA, my DNA.
Sure.
I hate them. So just understand, I say this all begrudgingly. I say this all trying to be an objective observer.
Yeah.
I wish I could join, because a lot of you with you, like Jake Hesser, he doesn't really believe too much in this Alabama team. I think it's kind of going to be business as usual. I got Georgia, Bama, and a tier of their own. Then I've kind of got Texas, Ole Miss trying to prove to me that they belong in that tier. And then I've got your grouping of Mizzou, Tennessee, LSU.
All the rest. A&M, Auburn,
and
whatever.
A&M's kind of knocking on the door because you have that group by years.
I agree. I think it's 4 and then 3, although I would say that it's Georgia, Texas ahead of the other two in the Big Four, and then you start dropping down. But.
I mean, my deal with Texas is I was the biggest Texas hater forever. Or I was a Sark hater. And I kept saying before the last year, like, win 10 games and I'll change my mind. And so he did it.
Yeah.
And so I give him credit, and I see it. I still got questions about their secondary, and even though I know they had some guys missing spring, and that's why the spring game looked so bad. But also, I got a little bit of like, just prove it to me again, Texas.
Let me see it.
Let me see it one more time.
Yeah.
Let me see it. Now, I'm not sitting here hating like I was last year, like being like, y'all are gonna suck, fuck you. Just prove it to me again, and then I'll fully give you the benefit of the doubt from here on out.
I would say for Texas, prove it to me in one game. Once I see it in one game, another game, a big game, then I'm all on board. And I think they can.
When do they play Michigan? Week 2?
Week 2.
That's going to be fascinating because as many question marks as Michigan has, the defense is going to be incredible. They still have Will Johnson and Mason Graham.
2 All-Americans. Two consensus All-Americans.
The defense is still going to be awesome. So we'll learn about Quinn Ewers and that offense and their worth that game.
It'll be awesome. T-Bob, well, I think the most important question, you're done for the day, at least on 104.5 in Baton Rouge. What time are we hitting the pool, and how many Coors Lights / Miller Lights are we having?
I feel so bad because I just keep agreeing to do. The pool's probably going to I'm thinking around 5 or 6.
Okay.
I'm thinking around 5 or 6. I'm going to do the afternoon radio kind of car wash. And then at some point this week, I got to commit an afternoon to go buying birthday presents for my wonderful wife who's at home with the 3 kids, and I love you so dearly, and I'm so thankful.
He does. He talked about at the pool the other day, yesterday. He talked. All he did was talking about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Appreciate it, dude.
All right, Bear, thank you so much, brother.
One state over. You have the Ole Miss Rebels. If you watch this show, you know how high I am on the Ole Miss Rebels. I think Lane Kiffin and his crew can not only get to the college football playoff, but perhaps win the college football playoff. And I talked about that and more with Richard Cross of Super Talk Mississippi. All right, Richard Cross, the voice of Ole Miss. Is that fair to call you the voice of Ole Miss?
I don't know.
Close enough.
We can go with that.
We can
Sports
go
Talk
with that.
Mississippi and some SEC Network and ESPN stuff.
You're on SEC Network a lot. I see you popping in there. I'm like, oh, I know that guy. I used to go get steaks with him in Hoover all the time.
That's right. It's been a fun ride. Just thankful to. It's been cool to mix radio and television and get to go some cool places. And in some ways, with football, it's taken me out of the SEC footprint. Like last year, I did mostly American Conference games, but basketball and baseball is more SEC. So it's been fun.
Nice. So Lane has built the all transfer portal team. Is that fair to say? He's built guys up, but with Ivy, and now with the guys from Texas A&M and Jackson Dart and Juice Wells coming in, and Walter Nolan. he's picking and choosing, to me, kind of like Oklahoma did with Lincoln Riley. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, it's weird. It's like I don't really think about Jackson Dart as a transfer portal guy because he's going into his third year.
USC.
Yeah. Well, I guess he did a little bit,
but not really.
But it's like once somebody's in the program 2 or 3 years, it's like, okay, we'll take the transfer portal label. Now they're homegrown, which is not true, right? Obviously, but it kind of feels that way. Yeah, I think it's a mix, and it's a recognition, in my mind, of what you can do at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I don't think Ole Miss is ever going to be a place, where they're going to load up with nothing but 4- and 5-star kids out of high school.
Sure.
But the transfer portal has given them the ability to build a roster that, on the back end, looks a lot more like a roster for LSU, Auburn, Georgia, Alabama, whoever you want to look. The overall roster ends up looking more like those, and I think this is probably the best not probably, it's by far the best roster that he's had top to bottom.
So you look at these Heisman Trophy odds, and dang, it is bright.
We can do sunglasses if you want.
It's ridiculous. Well, I have no hair, so that's the problem. I mean, look, it's like
shining off your
hair. Very shiny. So Jackson Dart, you look at all these Heisman odds, he's behind Quinn and behind Carson and Dylan Gabriel, which I think is ridiculous. But
kind of jumped this week, yeah.
He did. So is that possible?
I mean, possible in the sense that what does it take to be a Heisman Trophy quarterback? I mean, in a lot of ways, it's the quarterback on the best team in college football. It's not exclusively that, but that's a lot of what it is. So is Ole Miss going to win enough? So you probably need to set the minimum win total at 10. I think that's doable.
It's crazy, too, thinking about historically where Ole Miss was.
Right.
Like 10-win season being the expectation.
And they've done it now twice in the last 3 years. Yeah. And the 11 was the most ever in school history last year.
We're old guys. Like that, just to me, it's like, it's fascinating. That's where
it's like you've got to be really old, like 1960s old, to think about Ole Miss as a likely 10-win team, like today years old. So will they win enough? I think so. Statistically, what's it going to look like? I mean, 3,500 yards passing with 30 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, those aren't Heisman numbers anymore.
Not at all, no.
It's got to be 4,500 yards with 800 yards rushing and 40 touchdowns and 8 picks and another 7 touchdowns on the ground.
Right.
Is that possible? I guess so. I don't know that they will use him that much in the running game.
Right.
He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to rush for 800.
He can.
Yeah, if that's how you wanted to use him. But if you're going to have him be a 4,000-yard passer, then it's probably more like 300 or 400 yards, and he goes and gets some really crucial first downs.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like he's the whole duck your head and plow a Georgia Tech defender. That's great for a highlight reel.
That's
and that's
not what you
great
want to
for
do.
Team morale.
Right.
I'm not sure that's great for being a college football playoff team.
No, it's not. But in terms of the running attack itself, I have said that the loss of Quinshon Judkins is being overblown a little bit. He's a great running back.
Yeah.
But Ulysses is there. Logan's there. Obviously, Jackson can run. Is that fair to say, hey, they're still going to be able to run the ball and the loss is not as big as it might seem on paper?
I don't want to belittle it by like doing some addition by subtraction and like try to convince people that that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I think he is one of the elite running backs in college football. Is he the best? I don't know. Maybe so.
Right.
So the idea that you are better by not having Quinshon Judkins on your team from a production standpoint, I think that's silly. I do think that there were some issues in the locker room, and so from a chemistry standpoint, can you add enough in terms of chemistry and production with what you've got to make up for what you lost? I think that's doable, and it starts with Ulysses Bentley. I'm really, really intrigued to see how they use him. I don't think he's a 25 carries a game guy, but can he be 14 carries a game?
20 touches total overall?
I think that's reasonable, and there's great explosive ability. You got to keep him healthy. I mean, obviously his best season was his freshman year at SMU.
Right.
But he was important for Ole Miss a year ago. And then the Amos kid that comes in from Miami, Ohio, is a 1,000-yard rusher. You know, you hope to get Logan Diggs. And, I mean, if Logan Diggs didn't come into the mix until, say, I don't know, the third week of October, I mean, how about fresh legs? If he's healthy and feels good and trusts the knee, like it's all the way back, and that'd be that would almost be like a trade deadline pickup. Hey, is this a guy that can help you in that push for the playoffs and go win a World Series? It's kind of what it would feel like.
Yeah.
So, there's some pieces there. And Henry Parrish comes back to Ole Miss as well. Was at Miami. So they've got some pieces.
And Henry Parrish
in the
was
running
good
game.
at Miami when they didn't have much of a passing.
And Ole Miss was not excited to lose him. Like they lost him when Kevin Smith went to Miami.
Right.
And then Kevin Smith came back to Ole Miss, and a year later Parrish is coming back as well.
So I've always said with Ole Miss, and really I think this is the case in college football now all over the place, is defense doesn't win championships, just enough defense wins championships. And for Ole Miss, I mean, it's sort of a moving target, right? Because if you're dynamic, which is what Lane does and what Ole Miss probably will be, all you need to be is adequate and create havoc in the backfield and force turnovers and get teams behind the sticks. I think this is the best chance that Ole Miss has to be that team. And if they can be just adequate, are they a team that can make the playoff or actually win the playoff?
Well, so I think they're going to be a little better defensively, and it's because of the defensive line.
Yeah.
I think that's where it starts. I mean, you get some dudes there, whether you're talking about Walter Nolan coming in or J.J. Pegues in his 17th year of college, or
former tight end J.J. Pegues.
slash fullback slash
ballet dancer, whatever he does.
When he played quarterback in high school, I mean, he's an Oxford kid. Unbelievable. I mean, his athletic ability is just off the charts. Yeah, he was special in high school, and
I remember at Auburn he caught a little pass out in the flat as a tight end, and then juked some dude and spin move on the other, hit the circle. But that's like create a player on a video game.
Yeah. So him and then Jared Ivey, who's here this week. I mean, I think there's some really good pieces on the defensive line. I think middle of the defensive secondary, and at least at one corner, they're really good.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of a question mark at the other corner spot. So I actually think they're going to be better defensively than they were a year ago, and they were adequate last year. The second part of the question, in the playoff or win the playoff, I think this is a team that is good enough to win a game or maybe a couple of games in the playoff. And then after that, I don't even know how you predict that.
Catch a couple breaks.
Even if you're talking about Georgia, right? So you're going to need a couple of breaks.
Yep.
You're going to need to be healthy. You're going to be needing
matchups.
You're going to need to be playing your best ball of the year. A favorable matchup. Yeah. I mean, so I think there's a lot that goes into it. But yes, I think it's funny how the dynamic has changed, right? Forever it's been, can you get to Atlanta and be the SEC champion?
Yeah.
And there are people that are still asking that question, like, what? Hey, can Ole Miss win an SEC championship? I don't know. And I'm sure that's on a goal sheet somewhere.
Right.
But the goal is now to be part of the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
And I might argue that you'd rather be the 5 or 6 seed than one of the top 4 seeds.
Be the number 3 team in the SEC.
Because, man, these on-campus playoff games are going to be so amazing.
Yes, they are.
And have you finally come around? I know you were like, well, then you're still an idiot.
Well, hold on. Still an idiot. I never stopped being an idiot. And that has nothing to do with college football, just in general.
Yeah, but I don't understand your take, and I appreciate that you've stuck with it, that less is better when we're talking about, I know you say we don't need to dumb it down and all that good stuff. Like, that's fine, but, and to me, the only thing better than a 12-team playoff might be a 16-team playoff.
Oh, God.
And look, I think 12 is a really good number. Here's the thing that I think is wrong with what we're doing right now, that you're not going to give the top 4 seeds the opportunity to play a game on their campus.
Yes, I think that's wrong too. I also think that automatic bids are wrong, but that there's no way you can avoid automatic bids. Like if Liberty makes the playoff as a 12 seed this year, are they really the 12th best team in college football? The answer is no.
And you know what? I don't have an issue with a group of 5 team being it, but I think they need to earn it beyond just an automatic bid. And so if you say, look, if you are a group of 5 team that is ranked in the top, 15 of the college football playoff
16.
poll, then you have earned a spot and you are guaranteed a spot.
Okay. Yeah.
But if Liberty is 23rd or 26th on the college football playoff committee, but they happen to be the highest ranked group of 5 team, does that mean I think Liberty should be in with the schedule they're going to play this year? Absolutely not.
No, I agree. I hate automatic bids, but if you have to have them, that makes sense. Put some qualifiers on it.
Yeah.
And I think look, I hate the 12-team playoff. We know that, but you just can't have.
But how can you hate what we're going to get this year?
Because we're not gonna a lot of times there are only 3 teams that are worth a national championship. Sometimes there are 4. Sometimes there are only 2. There are not 12. Ever. You're dumbing down the regular season.
So either the cream will rise to the top, or a team will play well enough to get in, and then well enough over the course of a month to win it all.
But they're not. But just getting in, the teams that just get in are not going to be good enough to win a national championship, nor should they be considered as national champions because they are not earning it throughout the course of the season. To me, the best part about college football is that in week 2, we could have a loss. Something crazy could happen, and it might seem like the end of the world. But it might not be, and that uncertainty is what I love. The fact that we can sit here in mid-November and argue about a team being elite or just pretty good, to me that's okay because the national championship should be about who's elite.
So use Georgia as an example.
Yes.
Let's say that somehow they stumble and they lose to Clemson in the season opener.
Okay.
I get what you're saying. It's now really entertaining to watch Georgia because they play now the next 11 games with their back squarely against the wall.
Yep.
But I also like the fact that Georgia could lose that game, be elite for the rest of the year. We all look at them and go, that is a playoff team.
Sure.
But then they lose a 1-point game in the SEC championship game, and
they're
now
out.
all of a sudden they're not good enough to win a national championship anymore? To me, that's faulty logic.
But here's the thing, too. There is no logic, right? For me, looking at Georgia was the best team in the country last season. They lost at the wrong time.
Right.
But the fact that there's so many moving parts and you can lose at the wrong time cranks up pressure for each team depending on situations, and I love that. I know you probably have. I love that.
Yeah, but using that Georgia example, let's say they lose to Clemson, which again I don't think is going to happen, but just for the sake of this conversation, they win their next 11 games.
Okay.
They go undefeated in the SEC. They play in the SEC championship game against, I don't know, whoever.
Right.
Say Texas.
Okay.
And let's say Texas kicks a field goal as time expires.
Okay.
Now I'm supposed to believe all of a sudden that Georgia shouldn't have a chance to play for a national
Don't
title.
lose.
I don't. Well, I understand what you're saying. So what's the punishment? Well, they've now got a harder road to win a title. They're going to have to go on the road as either a 10, 11, 12, or whatever the number is, 9, 10, 11, 12 seed.
Sure.
They're going to have to win a road game. They're going to have to go on the road the next week and win at a neutral site, and then again the week after that, and then the national championship game.
It's a more difficult road.
So if they are good enough to say, you know what, that Georgia team deserves to be in the playoff, okay, but their road should be harder because they got 2 black marks on their resume.
Correct.
But then they win 4 games in that scenario. They deserve to be national champions in my mind.
But don't lose. Don't lose.
Fine, but it's hard to win all the time.
It is, and that's the problem. Because it's hard to win all the time, you should reward those teams that do, in the sense that they should not have to deal with a Georgia team like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but are all resumes created equal? I mean, last year Georgia's schedule was a joke. This year Georgia might have the most difficult schedule.
All
in
schedules
all of
are not
college
created equal, which means that you can't judge because.
So a 2-loss Georgia who loses to Clemson, and let's say they finish in the top 5, and they're a playoff team, and they lose to Texas that went undefeated and ends up being the number 1 overall seed. So they are in that scenario 11-2.
Okay. What's the rest of the landscape though? We're talking about an undefeated Ohio State team or Oregon or whatever. We're going to talk about a Florida State team that runs the table or Miami or whoever. It would depend on the landscape. And that's what I love about it, is that there are no defined parameters.
Yeah.
But I'm stupid.
It wouldn't be an undefeated Texas team because that also would mean
that Texas would have to beat Georgia twice.
Right. Well, no, that would mean that in that scenario,
theoretically,
that Georgia had beaten Texas on the road.
Okay.
They had beaten Ole Miss on the road.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, I know we're going in circles with a hypothetical, and we're just not going to agree on this. But to me, the one argument that I hate about the college football playoff is that it makes the regular season less significant. And I've probably heard you probably made that argument.
Yes.
Here's the thing. I would say it makes a handful of games less significant, but it takes another 50 games and makes them more significant and makes them matter.
But what we're talking about are bids and buys, right? You're talking about bids and buys being what's important down the stretch, and
Sure.
those games being important.
Yeah.
I like that every game's important because we don't
But
know
every
what
game's not important.
But we don't know which games are or which games aren't, and that to me is the way that college football differentiates itself, is that we can sit here and look at any possible game, and it can be the most meaningful game of the season, and we treat it that way, which to me is.
But most people don't.
Well, that's their problem.
Well,
They should.
but I mean, let's say you've got 9-1 Wisconsin playing 9-1 Iowa.
Hell yeah.
In the past, what were we talking about? Like the bid for the Citrus Bowl?
No, a 9-1 team in the Big Ten would be in the playoff mix.
Maybe whatever.
Can you imagine 9-1 Iowa with that offense? Remember when they were in the?
Is that a foreign concept?
Remember when they were in the Big Ten championship game undefeated?
Mm-hmm. I do.
That was wild. Anyway,
So do you think Ole Miss is a playoff team?
Yeah, I think they're capable of winning it too.
The whole thing.
I think they're one of the few teams. I think it's Georgia, Ohio State,
Oregon,
Maybe. Texas, Ole Miss.
Alabama.
No. Well, Alabama's wait and see. There's no blueprint for replacing the best of all time, right? So for Alabama, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe, but we have to see what they are because we have no idea what they are.
Alabama lost a lot off of that team. Not just Nick Saban. They lost a lot off of that team. Obviously, it's a really talented roster.
They don't have a running back that has been proven. Jam Miller's been okay, but Justice Haynes, we have to see. They don't have their best wide receiver. They've got a young wide receiving core. You look at that team, and it's like, damn, Kalen DeBoer inherited not necessarily a mess, but certainly a mess by Alabama standards.
But okay, so even with those teams you named, I think it was 6, and then maybe you say, well, maybe Florida State, maybe Clemson, whether you believe, that's still a bigger number of teams that we think legitimately has a chance to win a national championship than we've had in recent years.
And this is the exception. That's why.
Or is this the new rule?
Well, that's a good point. We'll see. We don't know, and that's the beauty of it because you go back.
But you want to fight against growing the game.
Here's the thing.
Because you're an elitist.
I am an elitist. But here's the thing too, and there's no possible way to know because remember back in 2014, the second week of the season, every Big Ten team lost, including Ohio State, to Virginia Tech in Blacksburg.
What year?
2014, the first year of the playoff. And I said it. Everybody said that the Big Ten is done. It's over. They can't win a national championship. And we were wrong. We were all wrong. And so that's the same mindset I'm taking going into the 12-team playoff this year is we can make definitive arguments, like you said, like there could be 6 teams. I could sit here and say there could be 40 teams that can win a national championship. We have no idea. And that's what makes this season really interesting. That's,
I've said over and over on our show, and Haydad loves to Brian Haydad just loves to throw it back in my face.
Really?
Oh, it's just because Ole Miss. I'm more excited about this college football season than I have been in a long, long time. He's like, well, do you think so? You live in Oxford. Yes.
It's not necessarily that.
That factors into it, but I'm so fired up to watch 4 playoff games on campuses in December. Do you know how good that's going to be?
Can you imagine Ohio State if it's in Ohio State?
Well,
or look, Oregon in the rain. Think about that.
So just,
I know I'm saying stuff that I hate.
No, I get that. But, think about if Ole Miss were to host a playoff. Let's say they're the 6th seed.
They don't have enough alcohol in that city.
Or let's say they're the 7, and Notre Dame is the 9.
Flip it around.
9, 10, 11.
What if Notre Dame is the 7 and whatever, Ole Miss plays up there?
Yeah. Which would be cool. But
Oxford.
But I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of, can you imagine Ole Miss hosting a December playoff game with Notre Dame or Michigan?
It would be very cool.
Florida State
it's
or
going to
whomever,
be very cool.
Clemson rolling in.
Here's where I am.
What you don't want is hosting Alabama in a playoff
That is
game.
true.
Because I've seen that 1,000 times.
Yes. Here's where I am with that. And I think it's going to be awesome. Stuff like that, going to be fantastic. It's like, not to get political, but to me, I've conceded the race. I've made the phone call to the president who won the election. Everybody got what they wanted with an expanded playoff, and it's still going to be badass.
Yeah.
Because it's college football.
Doesn't matter how many times we try to screw it up. it's pretty dang resilient.
It is it's the best sport in the world. Well, Richard, appreciate it. We've been talking so long that the sun has moved.
Yeah.
And
sorry if I was long-winded.
You're good. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. And to wrap things up here, Gary Stokan, a guy I've known for a very long time, president and CEO of the Peach Bowl. They've got the best game of week 1 in their game between Georgia and Clemson, most likely number 1 Georgia, and a Clemson team that I think will be, flirting with the top 10 in the preseason AP top 25. We talked about that, college football playoff, and more with Gary Stokan. So Gary Stokan of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, I feel like I talk to you all the time. Since we are in the same city. So obviously you've had great success with your kickoff game and also with the Peach Bowl. This kickoff game between Clemson and Georgia is by far the best game of opening weekend and could maybe dictate what happens in the college football playoff landscape for the entire season. How excited are you about this?
Well, it's a great way to kick off this season. As you said, having number 1 Georgia, Clemson's been ranked anywhere from number 9 to 12 to 15.
They're sort of all over the place.
Yeah, both fan bases are tremendous.
Yep.
We could set a record from what we're seeing with ticket sales. So, and Georgia would like to play in Atlanta 4 times.
And they could.
Between the SEC Championship, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and the National Championship game. So it's a great way to start the season, and we're very blessed to have both Clemson and Georgia.
You know, Clemson is sort of the OG of the kickoff games because the first one was Alabama-Clemson. What is it like having a team like that where everything started with them to now seeing, hey, you know what, they're playing the most important game of opening weekend again?
Well, and it's interesting. In between that, in 2012, if Dabo Swinney were sitting here, he would tell you that was the start of Clemson's run because 4th and 16, Taj Boyd to Hopkins, they kick a field goal. They beat LSU 13-12, and the word Clemsoning fell out of the dictionary.
It disappeared.
And the next year they beat
Georgia.
Georgia.
Although Dabo still hears it. He gets really mad when he hears it.
I'll bet you. And they beat Georgia the next year and went on to win the national championship. So, you know, we've been a part of Alabama's growth. We've been a part of Clemson's growth. And now to see Clemson, you know, they're ready to get back up there.
It was a 9-win season. It was a 9-win season last year, which is like, oh my God, what happened to that? Flora 9-win
He's
season.
had like 10-win seasons.
Right. They're down. Fire everybody now.
Right.
So with Georgia, obviously Atlanta, and I know that a lot of people in our world say, well, you know, you're going to have a huge home field advantage for Georgia. I disagree. I think Clemson's going to travel very well, and I think for your game, that's always what I enjoy most about it, is when you get 50-50, 60-40, and I think you're going to get that this year. But from a ticket sales perspective, I would imagine having the Bulldogs in is not a terrible thing.
No, and having Clemson in is not a terrible thing either. Both schools have been in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and the kickoff game numerous times. Both have been so good to us. You know, this business is all about relationships. And both Georgia and Clemson have been very good to us. But both teams get equal amount of tickets. And both teams wanted so many tickets that, you know, we could have sold probably another 20,000. That's why I say I think it's going to be a record crowd. I think you will see 50-50. There's so many Clemson grads that live in Georgia, let alone the people that can drive in pretty easy, and both having the same amount of tickets. So, you know, it's going to be probably one of the loudest games we've ever had. And we've had, you know, between Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Oklahoma, you know, we've had some really
there have been
huge
some good
games.
ones. There have been some good ones, and plus, you know, that rivalry, Clemson-Georgia, it's a rivalry not a lot of people actually know about, but you'll hear a lot about it leading into the season because it is big. It is big. They're only an hour apart. So,
well, and it's interesting. When we did this deal, Greg McGarity and Dan Radakovich were the ADs. And we had talked about, they had talked about playing home and home. And I said, well, why don't you add a third game playing in Atlanta? So we're starting basically the 3-game series in Atlanta, and then next year I think they play at Georgia, and then the last game is at Clemson.
And that's a big reason why some of Georgia's future schedules now kind of being tinkered with a little bit because of obviously the playoff era and what people think it'll take to get into the playoff era. But obviously you've been a part of this since its inception in 2014. How excited are you to be a part of this new venture and have the Peach Bowl, part of something that honestly, like, we don't even really know what it's going to look like, but it'll be new, it'll be fun, it'll be fresh.
Yeah, I just met with Rich Kelly, the new executive director, and we were talking about, some of the unintended consequences, some of the things that we'll probably learn in the first year, whether it will morph or change, whatever. Who knows? We still have 2 years left on the original contract. But the great thing for us is we're a quarterfinal this year, we're a semifinal next year. So having a quarterfinal national championship and a semifinal, we've kept Atlanta in the forefront of college football. And now we're negotiating to hopefully extend that from 26 through 31 to stay a part of whatever the playoff looks forward to in 2026.
Well, it is the capital of college football, the Hall of Fame, and now SEC Media Days coming back again
next year.
So you guys are probably the biggest part of making Atlanta the mecca of college football. Appreciate you hopping on.
I appreciate you saying that, because with your reputation, knowing
I
college
haven't ruined
football,
my reputation yet.
knowing college football like and been such a great part of it, hearing that from you warms my heart, because we've had this as a strategy by moving the College Football Hall of Fame to Atlanta, trying to get into the CFP or the BCS, trying to get this kickoff game started. All these things have been to make Atlanta, the capital of college football. And so to hear it from you, we've reached our goal.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll send you my Venmo address, and you can. I also take crypto. Either way, but Gary Stokan, appreciate it.
I do neither.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Barrett.
Thanks,
Good
man.
to see you, buddy.
You too. That'll wrap it up for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Reminder, we are brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all things sports this summer. You can go use promo code BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V, that's B-L-E-A-V, and they'll match your first deposit up to $250. Day 2 coming up. Until then,